Hi everyone, this is Sara Morozow, and I'm so excited to be part of the Bat Sheva Academy Learnathon. I really applaud Hadassah Shem Tov and her entire team for making Torah learning available for a Jewish woman, and I'm really excited to be here today. The topic today is the psychology of seduction, which in simple terms means it will be an introduction to the laws of Yichud. And we're going to use the Gemara Kiddushin as our text. And what I want to make very clear at the outset is that this is not a halachos shir of the laws of Yichud. Yes, you should review the laws of Yichud. There's a nice book available in English from Sichos in English, the laws of Yichud. That is halacha l'maisa. Now we're going to do background information based on the Gemara. I also want to emphasize, as a Lubavitcher, that the Rebbe, in a very famous Sikha of Parshas Noach Tavshin Aleph, where the Rebbe was talking about how women impact the world at large, and the difference of male and female energy in that respect, the Rebbe definitely made mention there how important it is for women, because we are involved with the world and we are around men, how women should review the laws of Yichud. And the Rebbe actually in a footnote make reference that if possible, if one takes an Uber, to use a female, especially if you're in a large city where it's easily available. And if you look in the Alter Rebbe's Hilchos Talmud Torah, where the Alter Rebbe there lists what a woman is required to know as part of Torah learning, one of the things that the Alter Rebbe clearly mentions on the list are the laws of Yichud. And on a practical level, often the laws of Yichud come up unexpectedly. You don't plan for the situation. All of a sudden, you're the last one. You're the last one there with a man. All of a sudden, you're in a secluded place. Everybody left. What are you supposed to do? So it's very, very important that women do know the halacha l'maisa. And now I will go to the background. So we will begin with a Mishnah. And again, I'm following the text, so you can follow the text as well. And we will begin with a Mishnah that says, one man should not seclude himself with two women. However, one woman is permitted to be secluded with two men. And the Gemara again will explain the difference between men and women. Rabbi Shimon Omer, then Rabbi Shimon says, Af ish echad misyachid im shnei noshim. One man is permitted to be alone with two women. When is that? Bizman she'ishtei imai, when his wife is also with him. V'yashen imam b'podaki, and he may sleep with them in an inn with those of the other woman. Mipnei she'ishtei mishamartei, because his wife watches him. And the Gemara, of course, will expand on these statements. And then the Mishnah continues. Misyached adam im imay im bitay. A man can be secluded with his mother or his daughter. V'yashen imam b'kir basar. He may even sleep with them with bodily contact. V'im higdugo. But once the son and daughter have grown up, zu yishena b'ksusa v'zeh yashen b'ksusa. She must sleep in her clothes and he must sleep in his clothes. So here we have the Mishnah, and now we're going to have some selections of Gemara to expound on this Mishnah. So the Gemara right away asks the question, my time, what is the reason that a man can be secluded may not be secluded, with two women, versus a woman may, yes, be secluded with two men? And the Gemara answers, Tanid ve'Eliyahu was taught in the academy of Eliyahu. Hayo v'nashim datan kallah aleihen, since the minds of women are easily swayed. So every woman is relying on the fact that the other woman will also be swayed, and therefore they will cover up for each other's wrongdoings. Versus two men, a man is not easily swayed, and therefore a man would be less likely to act immorally in the presence of another man, because the other man will not be swayed at the same time, and he won't be covering up for his misdeeds. Now that's one little piece. And now the Gemara continues, and the Gemara asks, there's a discussion, is there any hint for the laws of Yichud min ha-Torah? And the answer is yes, although there is a big discussion by the rabbis, what part of Yichud is min ha-Torah. One man and one woman is usually considered Yichud min ha-Torah, not unanimous, but when you learn the laws you'll see. And a man and a woman with multiple people or with a guy, and in other situations is not min ha-Torah. But what is the hint of the laws of Yichud min ha-Torah? Minahan hanamili, from where is these laws of Yichud derived? From where in the Torah? Amar Yechinem Shem Rabbi Shmuel, so Rabbi Yechon said the name of Rabbi Shmuel, Remez Yichud min ha-Torah minayin, where is there an allusion, a remez, a hint, in the Torah to the laws of seclusion, of Yichud, of a man and a woman? And the answer is Shenemar, because the pasuk says, and here we quote a pasuk in the context of the laws of a mesis. What's a mesis? So if you look in, this is in Chumash Devarim, Pekut Gimel Pasuk Zayin, the laws of a mesis is when there's a yid that quietly and privately instigates a fellow yid to serve Avodah Zarah. And these conversations take place in private. So the pasuk is saying, even if ki yisischa achicha ben imcha, if your brother, who is the son of your mother, will instigate you to serve idol worship, the Torah says, of course, do not listen to him. And then the Gemara continues and asks a question: why is the Torah specifying that which brother? The brother, your maternal brother, your brother who's the son of your mother. Ben aim mesis ben of einai mesis. So only a maternal brother is the one who can advise you an ill-fashioned way to serve a desire privately, to instigate you. And your paternal brother, if it's just the son of your father, not your mother, he won't instigate you. So why does the Torah identify the instigator as being specifically a maternal brother? So the Gemara answers, Elalai Molocha, rather the pasuk teaches you something. Here is a clear statement, Bein misyached in imai. A son may seclude himself with his mother. But it is forbidden for any other person, except for a son and a mother, to seclude themselves with any other erva. Erva is any other woman that he's forbidden to have marital relations with that are mentioned in the Torah. So the fact that the Torah says that your brother finds himself alone privately with his mother means that's a normal occurrence and it's allowed. And therefore, it's a normal thing. So this teaches us that a mother and a son, or a father and a daughter, may be secluded and to the exclusion of any other situation. That means any other male-female combination may not be secluded together. That is the Torah, that's where it's learned from the Torah. The Gemara then continues with the discussion that a paternal brother, that means a half brother from a father, is less likely is more likely to have an uncomfortable or a negative relationship with his half brother, because they would have to share, they would have to split the Yerusha for other reasons as well. And therefore, a Yid won't listen to the advice of his half brother from his father, because he knows already that he's giving him bad advice because he doesn't really care for his benefit. Versus if it's his brother from his mother, they have a close relationship, and he may then be more easily convinced to serve Avodah Zarah from his maternal brother. But we will skip the Gemara inside, and now we will continue with the laws of Yichud. And let's go to the words Neima. Shall we then say, Mathnisan, that the ruling of our Mishnah, the Loika Abba Shaul, is not in accordance with the view of Abba Shaul. What is the view of Abba Shaul that we may think that the Mishnah does not agree with? The Tanya, it was taught in a Brisa, and the Brisa tells us, Kol shloshim yom yotzei b'chek. For 30 days, the first 30 days when a newborn dies, within the first month, the burial is a bit different. You can carry the baby in your arms. It does not need a beer or a oren or anything. You could carry the baby in your arms, in your bosom. V'nikbar be'isha achas u'shnei anoshim. And he's buried by one woman and two men. So I just want to interject here that the cemetery is a place that is secluded, that is away from people, and it would present a shayla of yichud. So here it says, when we go to bury a newborn infant, one woman can go with two men. Aval goy b'ish echad u'shtei noshim. but not with one man and two women, because that will be a yichud situation. That's what it says in the Brisa. But Abba Shaul disagrees, and he says, Af bi'ish echad ushtei noshim, that when you're going to bury this infant, yes, it is permitted for one man to be alone with two women. So what is Abba Shaul disagreeing now with the Mishnah? He says that one man is permitted to be alone, secluded with two women. What is the cause of this disagreement? What situation is he talking about? So the Gemara says, Afigu Tema, you can even say, Abba Shaul, that our Mishnah does follow the view of Abba Shaul, that there is no disagreement. Why? Because Abba Shaul is giving an exception to the rule. That means the rule is one man cannot be alone with two women. However, what is the exception? Bishas aninus, at the time of mourning. Tvir yitzrei, person's yitzahara, a person's evil inclination is broken. And therefore, the laws of yichud are kind of toned down, and we don't fear that these two women will sin in the presence of one man. And then the Gemara explains that the Chachamim did not agree with Abba Shaul's view, that at the time of mourning, there's no Yetzirah, and they bring proof from a pasuk that at the time, a pasuk in Eicha, that at the time of mourning, the Yetzirah still is in full force, and it's not an excuse, and there's no exception, and the laws of Yichud apply fully. And then Abba Shaul counters by using the same pasuk and interpreting it differently. And the pasuk is Ma'is Einin Adam Chai Geral Chatav, and the word Yis'ainin can be interpreted differently. Yis'ainin can be interpreted that at time of mourning, the Yitzhahara is still very strong. And then Abba Shaul later on says, no, Ma'is Einin means don't complain, and you should never complain about a punishment or if the Eibshter mistreats him, kavayochel, so to speak, because what man doesn't sin, and of course, just the fact that he's alive is already what he should appreciate that Hashem gives him. So they interpret the word Yis'ainin differently. So either Abba Shaul wants to use it as a proof that at a time of mourning there is leniency, and the Chacham disagree, and they say no, there's no excuse at the time of mourning. So then the Rabbanim then say there's another reason. There's even another reason that the Chachamim forbid one man to be alone with two women. And they say, Ki ahu maise dahi itza, there's an incident that was perpetrated by a certain woman, dahave uvda va'apikte, for there was an incident which a woman took out a live infant for burial under the pretense that he was dead in order to be able to cohabit with a man accompanying her. So because these incidents do happen, therefore we have to be careful as a community, even if this is an exception, it's not the rule, we have to be careful as a community and not be lenient with the laws of Yichud. Now the Gemara continues and says to the next part, and the Gemara asks, "Aval isha achas," but one woman may be secluded with two men, and we have to explain: does this include all men or just certain men? Are there any qualifications or limitations? So here the Gemara says, "Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav." Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, "Lo shanu ella biksherim." The Chachamim of the Mishnah gave this ruling, but only in reference to men of high moral character. A kosher is a man of high moral character. Avo beprutzim, but regarding men of low moral character, afilu be'asara nami, even with a group of 10, one woman cannot be secluded with 10 men if they are prutzim, if they're of low moral character, not high moral character. How we pass in halacha l'maisa, there's definitely a difference of opinion in the Rishonim, and everybody will follow their paiskim. There's definitely a difference between Ashkenazim and Sfardim. Now, again, we're not talking about halacha l'maisa. There's also this whole discussion: is a man considered moral unless you know for a fact he's immoral, or is a man considered immoral unless you know for a fact he's of high moral character? But this again, when we say that one woman can be alone with two men, the Gemara qualifies right away that these two men must be of high moral character. And then Gemara supports this ruling by citing an actual occurrence. Hava Maisa, there was an incident. Uha Asara Vamita, in which 10 men carried out a woman on a bier under the pretense that she was dead for the purpose of committing adultery with her. That means 10 men and 1 woman who are all interested in being immoral. Yeah, even 10 men, they won't cover for each other. And because that is a human factor, therefore, men of high moral character are the only ones that can be secluded if there's only 1 woman in the picture. And then there's more support for this ruling that it must be men of a high moral character. Amar Rabbi Yosef said, Taida, you should know that people of low moral character would not hesitate to sin in each other's presence. And this is a frequent occurrence. And he gives another example of a different type of sin, of a theft. That 10 people together were happy to sin together and steal something that needed 10 people together to steal. Shura. 10 people join together to steal a beam that requires 10 people to carry together. And they were not ashamed of one another. So again, you have 10 sinners are happy to be partners in crime. And therefore, only men of high moral character are the ones that only 2 would undo the Yichud situation. And now we have another piece to the puzzle. The Gemara says another proof to the ruling of the Mishnah, and he says, Neima Messiah Lei. Let us say that the following Mishnah supports this ruling that 2 men must be of high moral character. And here, the Mishnah brings a different din. The din is if there's a isha saita, so if a man suspects his wife, of being alone with a man that he warned her against to be biyuchad alone with in seclusion, and now he has to bring her to the Beis HaMikdash to undergo the whole process of saita to find out if she's in fact innocent or if she's in fact guilty. Until her status is clarified, he is forbidden to have relations with her. Now he has to bring her from the city which he lived to the Beis HaMikdash, to Yerushalayim. They have to travel. So this husband and wife are forbidden for being alone together because they're forbidden from having relations together. So how do they travel? So the Mishnah says, the court, the Beis Din, has to provide for the husband an escort of 2 Talmidei Chachamim, 2 Torah scholars. Why? Shema Yovei Oleh Baderech. Maybe the Saita's husband will have relations with her on the way. Now the question is, why do you need 2 Talmidei Chachamim to go along with this man whose wife is suspected of being a Isha Saita, is a Isha Saita until her status is confirmed? Talmidei Chachamim does this imply that Torah scholars may accompany them? Aval insha da'alma loy. But if it's average people, they're not of high moral character, they cannot accompany him? Is that what the Mishnah is trying to say? So are we trying to prove from the Isha Saita that 2 Anashim Ksherim, 2 Talmidei Chachamim, men of high caliber, then would undo a Yichud situation? So do we prove from here that if they're of low moral character, then it would be problematic? So the Gemara says, no, we can't use this situation with the Isha Saita as a proof. Why not? Shane Talmidei Chachamim, it is because the Talmidei Chachamim are different. It's a different situation. It has nothing to do with moral character or not. What does it have to do? The Yadei, because they know, they will know how to warn the husband not to have relations with his wife. What is the problem here? Because if he has relations with his wife and we don't know about it, then the waters of the waters of Hashem's name in it won't be effective. And then what happens is we erase Hashem's name in vain. So in order to make sure that the entire process goes in a way that we don't cause Hashem's name to be erased in vain, because if we have halachic proof that he did sin or if he didn't sin, it will make a big difference if the Beis Din will go along with the process of the drinking of the water of the Isha Saita, etc. So the reason they sent the 2 Talmidei Chachamim along is because these Torah scholars knew the intricacies of the halachos of Saita, and they would know how to warn the husband not to have relations with the man with his wife, on the way to Yerushalayim. But here we have another piece to the puzzle. Why does the Gemara send two Talmidei Chachamim? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Lo shanu ela ba'ir. They taught in the Mishnah that one woman may be alone with two men only in reference of being in the city. Avo baderach, but as soon as we go on the road, okay, so we're not in the city, now we're going on the road. Then, two men are not enough to undo the yichud with one woman. We need three men. So here we have the husband and another two men. Why do we need three men? Maybe one of them will need to use the bathroom. And then, because he will go, the one who needs to use the bathroom will go in a secluded place away from the rest of the traveling party, so he could do what he needs to do in private. And then, if one goes, then we have one woman left with one man. And therefore, we have to always provide a third man when there's only one woman, so that no matter what, one woman is never left alone with two men. And then the Gemara continues to say, Neima Misayele, let us say that the previous cited Mishnah about the Saita supports this ruling, that Meistern Shnei Talmidei Chachamim Shema Yovei Oleh Baderach. So the Gemara continues to say, again, why did they put those two Talmidei Chachamim? Again, nothing to do, not so much about the warning, but they did it because they were traveling on the road, and that is the reason why we needed three men, not two. So then the Gemara says, but there could be another reason really why they provided two Talmidei Chachamim. Because if we want to warn the husband properly not to have relations with the man, one Talmid Chacham is enough. You don't need two. So what is the real reason that they sent two Talmidei Chachamim along with Isha Saita? It is because Hassam, there in the case of the suspected Saita, two Talmidei Chachamim are required for a entirely different reason. What's the reason? Okay, I just want to let you know very clearly, I do not read Gemara, I do not read Aramaic, I'm just reading with the English translation and with Nekudais. You could probably do the same. So if I misread one of the words, it is because I'm not familiar with Aramaic, and neither am I familiar with the language of the Gemara. And Baruch Hashem, we have the English translation. And the reason we need two Talmidei Chachamim is because they serve as witnesses. Because for witnesses, we need two. And if they serve as proper witnesses, then they could say witness at the court, the based in Yerushalayim, that they did have relations on the road, and then this would prevent Hashem's name from being erased properly, for no reason. If there's only one person there, obviously he can't be, one is not enough to say Eidos. We need two, and it will be problematic because the Beis Din cannot accept the testimony of only one. So now back to the original thinking about the two Talmidei Chachamim. Here we say that we cannot use the Talmid Chacham situation as a proof that they have to be more men of high moral character. The reason we send two Talmidei Chachamim with a Saita either could be because we need three people on the road, or it's because we need two people to be witness on the husband in Beis Din in case he, chas v'sholem, sinned with his wife, who is suspected of sinning. She's a Isha Saita, and we don't want Hashem's name to be erased for no reason, because if in fact they did sin, then it won't work. Hashem's name is erased, but she doesn't suffer the consequences. Now we go on to continue with the Gemara continues another story, again with another little point about what does it mean a man of high moral character, and we conclude that idea. Rav v'Rav Yehuda havu kozlei b'orcha. Rav and Yehuda were walking on the road. Hava kozla hi itza kamayu, and there was a certain woman walking in front of them. Amar le Rav v'Rav Yehuda. Rav said to Rav Yehuda, Dal kareich mikame Gehenim. Lift your feet and hurry ahead of Gehenim. That means hurry ahead in front of the woman. Amar le. So Rav Yehuda answered to Rav, V'ha mar huda amar b'ksherim shaper dame. Didn't you yourself say that regarding men of high moral character, it's permitted for them to be alone with a woman? That means we have over here one woman and you and me, two anashim ksherim. So what's the problem? Why do you have to run ahead of the woman, not to be alone in seclusion with her, with me, the second man? Aren't we men of high moral character? Isn't that okay? Amar le, so Rav answered to Rav Yehuda, mi yemar debikshem kegain anodat va'at. Who says that I said it in regard of a man of high moral character, such as you and I. We aren't even enough of high moral character. And of course, because it's one man and two women, and we're not kosher enough, we can't be alone with this woman. Ela kegoin mai, rather, what sort of man did I mean? Kegoin Reb Chanina bar Papi v'chaverov. And he referred to one of the other great sages, Chanina bar Papi, and his colleagues who were known to be very, very holy people. Okay, so that is a back and forth, and we learn now this concept of baderach, that on the road we need an extra man with one woman, and definitely there's a discussion that if you're alone with two men, they do have to be of moral individuals, and how that's interpreted in halacha. You'll read this firm, how it's interpreted halacha l'maisa. And now we continue with another interesting fact. So even though the laws of Yichud have a remez, they are hinted to in the Torah with the laws of the Mesis, the one who instigates to serve Avodah Zarah. However, it's not a mitzvah leisasei, and therefore, because it's not a mitzvah leisasei, we don't get malchus for being alone, a man and a woman to be alone together. But here the Gemara says something really interesting. Amar Rav said, Malkin al Yichud. We give malchus mardus, which is drabanan, on the yichud if a man is secluded with his wife. Vein oishin ala yichud, but we don't forbid this married woman who was alone with another man. We don't forbid her to continue staying married to her husband just for being secluded with a man. That means if a woman is beyichud with another man that's not her husband, okay, she gets punished malchus mardus, lashes midrabanan, but she can continue go back to live with her husband. We don't have to suspect anything further. Amar Rav Ashi, where Ashi says, Loi amaran ela b'yichud pniya. No, this din of flogging, of giving lashes to a woman who was secluded, the woman and the man, obviously, who are secluded, applies only to a woman who is single, not to a woman who is married. Why? Only to a woman who is single, but it does not apply to a woman the woman who was beyichud with a man. She won't get malchus if she's married. Why not? In order not to cast aspersions on her children. That means if she's going to be flogged, people are going to think that she actually sinned with the man that she was alone with. And if they have children afterwards, they are going to say that the child is a mamzer. I mean, if she continues to have children with her actual husband, it's a mamzer. Or if she had, I'm sorry about that. If she had a child after, is that child from the one she was alone with in seclusion? And then nebach or chas v'sholem, that the children should go through that shame, that people shouldn't talk about something uncomfortable or something not nice about the children themselves, and therefore never give malchus to a married woman, so that the children shouldn't chas v'sholem be subject to any discomfort or shame. Marzutra malki yamachri. So Marzutra says yes, you could give malchus to a married woman, and then just make an announcement that the reason she's getting malchus is only because she was beyichud, but nothing more. Amrle Rav Nachman mi par hetya Rav Ashi. So Rav Nachman from par hetya said to Rav Ashi, Mar nami wilke v'lachers. Let the rabbi, actually give lashes, whip the married woman, and then announce the reason, and then there won't be any confusion. It will be clear. Amrle ika deshama beha v'loy shama beha. It can happen that some may hear of the flogging, of the lashes, but they won't hear the announcement, the proclamation. And we don't want to risk, chas v'sholem, that the children will suffer. I found this very, very sensitive discussion, sensitive to chas v'sholem repercussions for the children. And we are going to skip the next few lines, and now we are going to continue another point. Okay, so now the Gemara continues. Amar Rabba said, Baila ba'ir, If a woman's husband is in the city, ein chayshishin mishum yichud, we're not concerned with yichud. So here we have another exception. And in the continuation of the laws of when she gets malchus margus or not, if we say that there was a married woman and she does get malchus, if we go by that opinion, still, if her husband was in the city, she doesn't get malchus because we know for sure she didn't sin. Of course, she can't be alone with a man. If she's alone with a man and her husband is the city, that's not a problem. Why is it not a problem? So there are different opinions. Different poskim will discuss why is it not a problem for a woman to be alone with another man as long as her husband is in the city. Is it because he may pop in on her because he's right nearby, and that alone will stop her from sinning? Or is it because just the fact that he's somewhere around, even if he actually won't pop in, he's even a little further, but he's somewhere in the larger city, so to speak, there's something about his presence in itself, even if he actually doesn't pop in, that makes her think twice before she acts immorally with another man. So these different opinions actually will come under the discussion of halachos l'maisa. Like what does it mean if my husband works in Manhattan and I'm in Brooklyn? Is that called bala ba'ir or not? Definitely all agree that even if he's in the same city, but there's no way he's coming home at that time. For example, he's in the ICU, chas v'shalom, in the hospital, or if he's in prison or something, then bala ba'ir is not doesn't help because he's not going to come in. No way. But again, we're not learning halachos l'maisa. I'm just giving you some background information. What is the thought process behind the fact that if her husband is in the city, she can be alone with a man? Again, there'll be exception to this, as we'll soon see, when bala ba'ir is not enough to undo the yichud situation. And then the Gemara says another example, when it is okay for a woman to be alone with a man. Pesach Pasuach, Amar Rabbi Yosef adds, Pesach Pasuach Rabim, if a door of the room in which a man and woman are secluded is open to a public thoroughfare, in Chayshishin Mishum Yichud, we are not concerned with the laws of Yichud. But then the Gemara right away brings a seemingly contradiction to this statement. And there's a story when a woman's husband was in the city and still the laws of Yichud, and still was a problem with Yichud. And what is the story? Rav Bibi Iklal Levei Rabbi Yosef. Rav Bibi once visited the house of Rabbi Yosef. Basar Devarech Rifta. After he ate bread with his guest, Amar Lahu, Rabbi Yosef said to his servants, Shikayle Darga Mituse Bivi. Remove the ladder from under Bivi. What does this mean? They were eating upstairs. And downstairs, Rabbi Yosef was going to leave the house, and downstairs his wife would be there. So if you remove the ladder between upstairs and downstairs, then Bibi won't be alone with Rabbi Yosef's wife. So but the Gemara asks the question, but did not Rabbah say that when her husband is in the city, we're not concerned with the laws of Yichud? So what's the problem if Rav Bibi is alone with the wife of Rabbi Yosef? So the Gemara answers, Shani, this is different. Rav Bibi, it's Shani Rav Bibi. Here in the case of Rav Bibi, it's different. Why is it different? Because she was a close friend, and therefore felt familiar with him. So now we have an added detail that if there's a man and a woman that are familiar with each other, it's called in halacha libay gaspa. They're familiar. They're going to there's 2 points. There's 2 ideas behind it. One of it is they're going to protect each other because they're friendly with each other, and the other idea is people are used to seeing them together. So they're not going to be suspicious. So they're not worried if people are going to see them together. They're going to ignore it because, they're together. And this could be if family members like brothers-in-laws and sisters-in-laws, mothers-in-laws and sons-in-law, or it could be a therapist, or some people who do business with women, because they're used to being in a certain type of friendly and close relationship with these women. Therefore, bala ba'ir won't be enough. This is what it says in Gemara, and we learn the halachos is pesach pasuach enough in that situation. That will be halachos l'maisa. But here it's interesting that the Gemara brings in this point. So now we're in the next piece of the Gemara discusses if there's groups of men and groups of women. There's one room with a few women, and there's another room with a group of men, and you have to go through one room in order to get to the other room, which is the outer room, which is the inner room, and how would that apply with a yichud situation. We're going to skip those few lines, but it's interesting to note that here we're going to say that whenever men and women gather at one spot, there's always a risk of misconduct. And therefore, the Gemara says, Abaya dayer gope. Whenever there was a group of men and women together, Abaya would arrange rows of jugs. It was like a mechitza, not a partition between the men and the women, so that if one of them crosses over to the other side, the jugs would start making noise and rattling, and there was an alert that something inappropriate is happening. Rava dayer kanar. Rava would arrange rows of reeds. Again, that if you pass through those reeds, it would start making noise. And of course, you're not supposed to, the men and the women should stay separate and shouldn't intermingle. Amar Avin said, Sakva deshata rigla. The sore spot of the year is Yontif. Yontif, people are merry, people are in a happy mood, people go out, have a good time. And that's the time where men and women were most likely to intermingle, and the Beis Din actually, in another place the Gemara describes, that the Beis Din would take measures to prevent inappropriate intermingling. The next piece of the Gemara actually, again, this was only supposed to take 20 minutes, and I'm running over time, so I think I'm going to summarize this in English, or maybe we should do it in Okay, let's do it in the original Gemara. It'll take another few minutes, but it's very interesting. What's interesting over here in this Gemara is that this piece of Gemara is going to tell us of even a story of a great Torah sage, and what prevented him from overcoming his evil inclination, his Yetzer Hara, was when he called other people to come quickly. And this shows that the presence of other people is what limits the passion and the immoral behavior between men and women. Certain captured women, after being redeemed, were brought to the city of Nahardea, or Naharda. They took them up to the second story of the house of Rab Amram Chasida. He was a pious person, a chassid. Ishku darga mikaymayu, and then they removed the ladder from before him. That means he was not married and he lived downstairs. And they took all these girls that were redeemed from captivity, and they put them upstairs. And now they removed this ladder, and now they're upstairs. They can't get downstairs, and he's downstairs, and he can't get upstairs. What happened is, one of the redeemed women passed by the hatch that was used as a passageway between the upper story and the lower level of the house. A light shone in the house through the hatch. And when that light was shining on the woman, Shakli Rav Amram with Darga, Rav Amram was so enthralled by her beauty that he took that ladder, that even 10 people cannot lift. They needed so many people to move the ladder. But when passion is, how do you say, turn it on? When this man, this great pious man, saw this woman, was enthralled by her beauty, and his taiva, his desire for her, was aroused, it was not rational. And he was able single-handedly to move this ladder that normally 10 people are needed to move. And that's the power, the intense power of passion. I don't want to use the word lust, chas v'shalom. I'm using the word passion. Dolyo l'chudei, he lifted it all by himself. Salik v'azil, he proceeded to climb up this ladder to proposition to her. Kimata l'fal l'darga ipsha. When he reached the middle of the ladder, he spread his feet apart to steady himself on the ladder. He was like, oh no, what did I just do? And he kind of took hold of himself. Rama kallah nura be Amram. And he shouted, he raised his voice and he said, Nura, there's a fire in the house of Amram, fire, fire. And he yelled, Asra banan, so the rabbis came running, again, supposedly to help him put out the fire. But they saw there was no fire there. and they saw what was going on. Amroge kisiftinon. They said to him, you put us to shame. We're so embarrassed from this incident. Amrogehu, and he answered to them, Mutav tichsefu be Amram ba'alma hadain. Better that you should be ashamed in the house of Amram in this world, and you shouldn't be ashamed of him in the world to come, because Baruch Hashem, I was able to stop myself from sin by asking you to come running. Okay, and then the Yetzer Hara left. That's the rest of those, that you could read it yourself. That's the rest of that story. Then the Gemara goes on to say a story of Reb Meir and Reb Akiva. Both of them actually had a very hard time understanding how can people how can men be immoral with women. So the Eibishter actually gave them each a test and put a beautiful woman in their eyesight and actually instilled in them the type of desire that an average or more than average other type of Yid would have for this woman, because the Eibishter wanted to give them the feeling what it's really like, what the struggle is really like in reality. Because Reb Meir and Reb Akiva were so engrossed in Torah learning, and elsewhere in Gemara it explains how when somebody has passion for Torah and is immersed in Torah learning, it stills the passion, the taiva, for women. So because they were so immersed in Torah learning, they couldn't relate to Yidden who are not so immersed in Torah learning, and therefore they do have a very natural burning desire for women. So the Eibishter wanted to give them an opportunity to see what it feels like. The Eibishter gave them both a test, and they almost reached one. The pretty woman was on the other side of a river, and they had to use a little plank in order even to get there, very unsteadily, almost even like risking their life a bit. And in the other situation, the woman was in a palm tree, and the rabbi started climbing the tree and almost grabbed her. And then the Eibishter removed that taiva, removed that Yetzer Hara, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, whoa. Because the Eibishter wanted to give them, just to show them what it's like in real life for many women. For many Yidden. And that, I think, is a very important point to understand, that it's human nature, and this is what we deal with. Hashem, in His great wisdom, created a passion and a desire for men to women, and also women to men. But in this context, it was from the men to the woman, and that's why laws are put into place so that the healthy passion can be preserved and used within the marriage relationship between husband and wife. And the laws of Yichud are put into place so that we prevent chas v'sholom immoral conduct between men and women. Now let's move on to the next part of the Mishnah that talks about as follows. We're up to the words that say, Misyached Adam im imai. A man is permitted to be secluded with his mother or with his daughter. Amar Behuda Amar Asi, so Behuda said in the name of Asi, Misyached Adam im achaisai. A man may be secluded with his sister. That means with his sister, from time to time, he may be alone with her, but vidar, but to actually live on a constant basis, on a permanent basis, can only be im imai v'im bitai, with his mother or his daughter. That means there's a difference between a sister. A sister can only be temporary, and a mother or a daughter can be on a permanent basis. Ki amar kame de Shmuel Amar, when Rabbi Yehuda said this in the front of Shmuel, he said, Asur l'syachid im kol hareish of the Torah, is forbidden to be alone with any of the hareish of the Torah, even a mother, even a sister, even a daughter, v'afilu mehema, even with an animal. So how do we explain this? So the Gemara challenges Shmuel, and he says, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Misyachid Adam im imai v'im bitai. A man may be secluded with his mother or with his daughter. The Yashan imar bikir basara, and a man may sleep with them with bodily contact when they're young. The Yufta de Shmuel. So this is a refutation of the opinion of Shmuel that says even with your mother and even with your daughter, you're not allowed to be biyichud. So the Gemara answers, Amar Lach Shmuel. Shmuel says, Shmuel could say to you, according to your premise that one may be alone with a mother or with a daughter, Hadatanya, how we explained that's what was started in a different brisa. In the other brisa it says that one's sister, one's mother-in-law, and all the other arayos that are mentioned in the Torah, one may not be alone with them, except when there's other people around. That means only when there are witnesses may one be alone with all those other relatives. And shagoy be'edim, and if there's not witnesses or there's not people that would undo the situation, they cannot be alone together. So how do we reconcile this? Ella Tanaihi, rather you have to admit that the issue whether one may be alone with an erva is actually a dispute among Tanoim. That means there are those Tanoim that say that even the mother and the daughter situation, people should be careful with. So here we have something to support this opinion. The Tanya, for was taught in the Brisa, Amar Reb Meir said to the members of his family, Hizar bi mipnei biti, be careful to be with me so that I will not be alone with my very own daughter. Amar Rabbi Tarfon also said similarly, Hizar mi mipnei kalasi, please be careful with me so I will not be alone with my daughter-in-law. And of course, a daughter and daughter-in-law are two different halachos. But totally two different situations. A daughter, the halacha is you're allowed to be alone with her, and a daughter-in-law not. But Rabbi Tarfon was trying to say, even people that you're close with, and you're familiar with, and you're good with them, you're not going to sin with them. And Rabbi Tarfon says, no, even people that we're familiar with, we have to be careful because we can sin. The Gemara says, Liglig olav Isai Talmud, a certain Talmud of Rabbi Tarfon actually mocked him for being so careful even with close relatives. Amar Rebo Mishum Rabbi Chanina Gamliel. Rebo said in the name of Chanina Gamliel, not more than a few days passed after the Talmud was disrespectful to Rabbi Tarfon, that this Talmud himself, stumbled and sinned with his very own mother-in-law. Again, halacha is very different from a daughter and a daughter-in-law or a mother-in-law. But in this situation, the discussion is, come on, we're so familiar and close with them, we're not going to sin with them. And the answer is, we have to be careful. Again, the halacha is different between the daughter and the daughter-in-law. Now the Gemara continues about a behema, and the answer is, the halacha l'maisa is that we can be alone with an animal. There were Tanaim who are careful, or other rabbis that were careful not to be alone in the field with an animal. But the halacha is, we can be alone with an animal because Yidden are not suspect of having relations with animals, or whatever, intercourse with animals. Now, there are other exceptions to the rule where two women, normally a man may not be alone with two women, but certain combinations of two women will definitely undo the laws of Yichud because they will not cover for each other. They will not be swayed in each other's presence. The very opposite, because they have uncomfortable or negative feelings between each other, therefore, we don't have to be concerned that both of them will misbehave with a man, but definitely they will kind of, for sure, not cover for each other. And what are those combinations? Amar Rava said, although the Mishnah ruled that in general it's forbidden for a man to be alone with two women, a man may be alone with two sisters-in-law, again, wives of two brothers, because if one of the brothers passes away and doesn't leave children, then they will end up being co-wives, and of course, that is not a comfortable situation. So there's already uncomfortable feelings between them. Vim shtei tsaros, with two co-wives together, will undo the yichud situation. Isha v'chamaisav, there's a mother together with her mother-in-law. A woman together with her mother-in-law. It undoes the yichud situation. One man may be alone between them because there's a natural uncomfortable feelings between them. We have our opinions why that may be so, but the Gemara actually explains that it is because it has to do with inheritance. The mother-in-law, if her husband, the father-in-law, passes away, her son will then get the inheritance, and her daughter-in-law will actually inherit her, her stuff, so to speak, and that leaves an uncomfortable feeling between them. But we're not going to analyze now mother-in-law, daughter-in-law psychology. Baruch Hashem, we have very wonderful mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationships nowadays. Baruch Hashem. Another example is Im Isha or Bas Baila, a woman and the daughter of her husband. That is a woman and her stepdaughter, not a comfortable situation. Again, the Gemara explains why. Then we have Im Isha v'tinaikes, if there's a woman and a girl. What age girl? Again, this is a shemeres. Sheidas tambia, one who knows the meaning of relations. The ein meiseres atzma will be, but she will not actually have relations with another man. And the poskim nowadays generally say it's between the age of 6 and 9. So if you have a woman and another girl who's the age of 6 and 9, it will undo the laws of Yichud. Okay, I think this is the end of the shir. You could read the rest of the Gemara yourself. And we will end here. And again, I want to thank Hadassah Shem Tov and the whole team of Achev Academy for doing an amazing job, for real Torah learning for Jewish women, exactly as the Rebbe told us that should be available for Jewish women. And I wish you lots of success. And I want to add again at the end, this is only background information, and it does not replace the importance of actually reviewing the law, the halachos l'maaseh.